We are pleased to welcome David Foote on our first Recruiting Roundtable. Recruiters Roundtable, driver recruiter for Brown Dog Carriers and Logistics. They are good friends of the show. Good morning to you, David. How you doing? And welcome to Road Gang Radio.
Good morning. I appreciate your coming on. And yes, Mike Parkhurst was a rabble-rouser of epic proportions back in the day. And I, as a kid, loved reading Overdrive magazine and seeing what he had to say about this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun stuff. And I have to tell you, I remember a couple of those pieces and was like, what in mother of pearl is he talking about? But I'm excited. And then I understood later on what he was talking about, and then it all made a lot more sense. You have a long experience in trucking. Before we get to Brown Dog Carriers and Logistics, why don't you give us a bit of your background about how you got on the road? I could read your bio, but it's much better if you tell it, man.
Well, so it all started in college in Minnesota, and to earn some money, I became what I like to call Captain Zerk. I had the fastest grease gun in Minneapolis. And in the process of greasing this company's trucks and changing the oil, they slowly taught me how to drive them. And I say I drove trucks, but I was never a truck driver because I got to operate intrastate Minnesota under the agricultural exemption. So nobody gave a what I did or what I was driving because it was agricultural. So scale houses would wave me right through. But that got me interested in trucking, and I've now been in trucking sales operations and primarily recruiting for about 30 years.
Okay, I want people to go to browndogcarriers.com because they are genuine friends of the show. Craig Morin is a genuine friend of ours over here at Radio Nemo, not just somebody that we've done business with, but a guy who has actually been there not only for me, but made sure that Dave got a chance to ride in the Reeds Across America convoy, which was an extraordinary experience for him. I've been begging him to do it for years, and he got to hook up with one of y'all's best drivers, and they had the best time in the world. I do want to talk about your area of expertise because one thing I know about the guys that run your company is that they're straight shooters. They tell it like it is. And I kind of wanted to talk for a minute about what the key to recruiting is. And of course, we begin with the truth, that if you tell it like it is, when you get people to come on board, there are no surprises other than the obstacles the road will occasionally throw in your way. So talk about gravitationally.
That's exactly right. If I'm honest with the applicant and the applicant is honest with me, we will quickly figure out if it's a good fit for them or not. So I tell drivers, if you're on SAP, which we hope you're not, let me know. If you've got some checkered things in your background, let me know. Let's see what we can work out together. And the other thing that I do, and I hope other recruiters would too, is say, well, we can't use you, but you might think about this or that. Because the goal of being a good recruiter is, yes, to hire drivers for Brown Dog, but also to keep people in this great industry, even if they do have a couple demerits on their record. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know. And the thing is, too, it's like you can also help people. It's kind of a really groovy thing because you've set up my favorite question to ask. It's two-parter. There are people that show up with dings and dongs on their record. And you also know, I can't get you right now, or you're not the right fit here, but I can also, as a human being, doing the human thing to keep somebody in trucking, can direct you in a way that might put you on the path to eventually bring you back to us. Here's the tougher question, though, David, the one that drives me crazy. You get a candidate that shows up, and they're a darn good driver, but they're not a fit for you. And I think you know what I'm talking about. There are people, because of their lifestyle choices, and I mean the family demands, stuff like that, who have scheduling problems. But, man, you're like, this dude is out of sight. It's one of the hardest temptations, I think, for a recruiter in a company. Like, this guy's got a great record. This gal knows what's what. They're going to bust their butt. But this job eventually will wear them down because of the demands of other areas of their life. Am I making sense?
You absolutely are. And here again, you got to be honest, and you got to do that applicant a solid and say, like, I have a guy who was begging me to come on, but he had a 58-mile one-way commute. And so I had to persuade him not to come on with us. I said, think it, that's 120 miles a week, or a day, just to come to work. And he and I did the math together, and he was like, oh, you maybe have a point. And he would have been great, but he would have burned out on it too quickly when he started seeing the miles pile up and the fuel that he was burning just to come to work. So not to mention, you put in a 12, 14-hour day.
That's it.
And then you've got a 2-hour commute. You're looking at 16 hours. Where's your time for your family, to have a meal, to get some proper rest? It's not a good mix.
Well, yeah, and
so you got to be honest.
I mean, and that's the thing too. It's like such a different kind of thing because our good friend Phone Master Dre, who's the producer over here, he makes a pretty long commute from Ocean Springs. The difference is like if you are driving to do more driving, there's a point at which, and look, everybody knows it. If you're in a car doing a commute and you're not commuting someplace to sit down, but to once again get behind the wheel of something else and move, that means if you're doing a 12 to 14-hour day, a lot of it's spent behind the wheel, you're adding an additional 2 hours behind the wheel on top of the time you're spending behind the wheel. That's
Absolutely
brutal.
And it's brutal, and there's the whole question of is it safe? Is it legal? Yeah, but is it safe? Is it ethical? And so sometimes, like you said, when you have a candidate who's great and you want to meet his mom, you know what I'm saying? But you got to realize that this isn't the right fit. And then I sign off by saying, I know you'll get another job, and I hope you hate it, and I hope you move closer to where we are.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. I'll tell you this, too, this is what's so important because, as you know, this industry is one of the strangest. It resembles the restaurant industry in this way, where you actually can be close friends with your competitors, where you actually can like your competitors because you can develop a relationship to say, look, I'm going to make a phone call for you right now because if these guys find a candidate that fits my needs better, they will call me as well. And part of what you do as a recruiter, and like I said, please, David, you've done this for a long time. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's also understanding the competition, not just from a competitional standpoint, but understanding them from a relationship standpoint so that everybody is increasing the level of safety on the road, everybody is increasing the responsibility on the road. Can you talk about in your own career, because you've worked in so many facets of this, do you find yourself with all the places you've been and that slow kind of movement towards the place that you are now, picking up bits and pieces from the previous jobs in the way that a lot of truckers do, and then bringing all of that institutional knowledge into your current position?
Yes, and unfortunately I brought with me the way I don't think things should be done, which is why I'm so happy that I'm at Brown Dog, because a previous carrier brought in a micromanagement that really just ruined driver morale. And if you don't have good driver morale, and I play the role of an advocate for the driver. Yeah, I'm trying to hire them, of course, but I'm not dispatching them. I'm not yelling at them. I'm their advocate. And if they're being micromanaged for nonsense, like not putting their seatbelt on to drive from where they're parked to the fuel dock, I mean, come on, let's look at this reasonably. So I absolutely have brought with me things that what I know will drive a driver crazy, no pun intended.
And that's an important thing, too, because if, in fact, and this is something that a lot of people who get into recruiting don't understand, you've made promises. You've actually become an ambassador and an advocate and an influencer for the company you work for. So when you tell people certain things, if those things aren't being delivered, a lot of people don't realize that part of what being a recruiter is, a responsible recruiter, is going back to people and say, look, I told them that they would have this time off, and now you're telling them they don't. Or I told them that this is the atmosphere here, and now there's a toxic one you're working into. So you almost, but that comes from the top as well, too, that the folks you work for, you get a chance to talk, because it's one of those things you got to basically talk to the people in charge and say, if I tell somebody this, is that true? That's a tough conversation, right?
it's absolutely true. And so I have some promo materials, and I review it with operations and with Greg periodically just to make sure that because we all know it ain't rainbows and unicorns, okay? And so I want to make sure that what I'm representing with the company is accurate so that, as you said from the outset, there's no surprises. And I'm very honest. I say, listen, it's still driving a truck, and people are still going to yell at you and everything, but here's how we are different. And one of the key things I say is that I know that a driver is going to get yelled at. There's always somebody ready to yell at a driver. You're late, you're early, you can't park there, you can't use the bathroom, what's the matter with you? So I let them understand that when they're here at Brown Dog, we're not going to yell at them. We're going to talk as adults because you've got enough pressures out there dealing with Massachusetts drivers, okay? And
hey, by the way, I've always said, what live free or die. The New Hampshire people used to tell with the people who moved in from Massachusetts we want more freedom. Now, can we bring our regulation with us? The massholes have arrived en masse.
They have, and the attitude has changed, and the whole thing, and it's up here in Maine too, to a certain extent. But it's just treating people as human beings. You said that too from the outset, of being respectful and polite. And nowadays, and even 30 years ago, you had language differences, cultural differences, gender differences that you have to listen to and accommodate, or they're going to not feel heard,
Well, and that's the other thing, too. In many ways, you're also educating the person not just about the company, but in some cases when the person is okay, I'll give you an example, hypothetical one, and then I got a story about driving in Maine that you will appreciate. Somebody moves from Virginia. Somebody moves from Virginia into the great state of Maine or in a nearby adjacent state, none of them of which are as good as Maine. They move by in an adjacent state, and they want to come work for Brown Dog. Do you find yourself, when it's a newbie to the region, having to explain the difference in weather and geography to people? Because you can have a really experienced truck driver who is used to intrastate or a limited run, a regional run in their area of the woods, and then they make their way up, of course, into Walden country. Do you have to kind of sometimes explain to them, okay, here's how people tend to drive around here? I wanted to ask that.
Yes.
Go ahead.
And now, right now, with Brown Dog, we're dealing only with local drivers who live in our region, and they're well acquainted with the Massachusetts drivers and the weather. But in a previous life, I had drivers coming from the West Coast who were terrified of coming to New England, and thinking that every street was about an ox cart wide, and it snowed in August. And I also had drivers coming up from the Carolinas and Florida who had never really dealt with snow. So we did have to do some hand-holding, and it goes back to the premise that I promote, is that the driver is the captain of that vessel. And if the captain doesn't feel it's safe to proceed, don't proceed. Just, there's nothing in that trailer that's worth running into a problem with. And thankfully, in New England, they take care of the roads so quickly up here that, you're talking, they get out and plow, and they sand it like crazy and salt it like crazy. That's why our cars are all rusted out.
I'm going to make
the roads are passable quickly.
I'll make you laugh. Because the roads are passable quickly, that's the absolute truth. Because they're passable quickly, I got myself into real trouble, but it's a shout-out to the folks in Maine. I was driving back from Reeds Across America, and a snowplow, he had a little bit of slippage. He came into my lane, and I had to swerve. And, of course, then I did the slow drift into the ditch on the side of the road. Miraculously ended up, and because I basically didn't panic, I just let my foot off the accelerator, put the car in neutral, and settled in nice. When I tell you, the AAA people were there. They said they'd be there in 45 minutes. They were there in 23. While I was on the side of the road, every single person that passed stopped and said, "Do you got somebody coming, or can I pull you out?" And that's the
yeah.
quality of people up there. I have a surprise for you, David. Speaking of Davids,
Yes.
I got Dave Nemo on the line, wanted to jump into the conversation.
Unbelievable.
Dave, tell David hi.
Hey, David, good morning. Listen, I just couldn't resist calling into you guys because, well, first off, Jim Costa and I have just a wonderful, we became friends on the road. In that, yeah, you know what I'm saying.
Of course. Of course. And what he's doing is so important, too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
no
dude. Question.
He's a good dude. Dave has
listen,
been stoked. He's been blowing up my phone on more. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to just say very quickly, you mentioned Mike Parkhurst. And my impression now, I'm probably old enough to be your dad, Dave. So I go back a little bit further. So I go back to the beginnings of OOIDA, of course. The Mid-America Trucking Show started in the same month and year that Charlie started Trucking Radio, the road game. But what I was going to say is, when Charlie left in '84, he went to the Grand Ole Opry in WSM, and then I got the show. I didn't take it, I got it. And I started going to Mid-America. So there's a lot of Mid-America stories to tell from the mid-'80s, okay? But there were two areas. Shepherdsville is where most of the recruiters stayed down there. But it's kind of a weird split. And then everybody else stayed at the Executive Inn or the Executive West. If the inn was full, those were the only hotels there. That was it.
Sure.
And everybody parked on the grassy area where the amusement park is now.
Oh, wow.
And it became a duck. It would become a duck pond one year and an ice skating rink the next year. You never know what was going to happen. But in the morning, everybody would. It's like we were going to school, we just walked across, I think that's Phillips Road right there, walked across to the East Wing, which was the only wing available for the truck show because there was a dog show in the West Wing and they would not relinquish their contract. The year they did, Mid-America doubled in size.
Yeah.
Then it grew from there. But you mentioned Mike, so we're in the Executive Inn. John Treble's doing his show at night from there. I did not do that from Mid-America at that time. The Executive Inn, if you haven't seen it, it's gone now. The building's gone. The Executive West is now another big chain or something. They've kind of redone it. I haven't been inside. That's where the escargot was served, but that's another story. But
Parkhurst, Dave, Parkhurst.
Parkhurst, yeah.
Okay, wait, one more thing. The only time I ever had escargot was at a truck show in Louisville, Kentucky.
Well, there you go.
Connect those dots, you know what I'm saying? So anyway, the Executive Inn, you expected Miss Kitty from Gunsmoke to come downstairs because it looked like a set from an old Western. It had the red velvet and all the black stuff and the big heavy furniture, right? Parkhurst walks in with 5 beautiful models, just like Hugh Hefner, and that is my everlasting vision of Mike Parkhurst.
Well, he always did have Miss Overdrive of the month, and I can remember, and I was just a pimply-faced kid, and my mom's looking at the cover of these magazines thinking I'm getting some sort of sketchy adult publication, and in some ways maybe it was a little, but he put it out there. His rabble-rousing, the pretty ladies, and beautiful, beautiful owner-operator trucks.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Speaking of beautiful ladies and beautiful trucks, I don't remember when this ended, but Peterbilt always had a big area, big display with the trucks, and they had beautiful girls in evening dresses playing grand pianos. And if you take a look at their advertising back in those days, there was also always a beautiful girl in a long evening dress.
Did she have a plate of escargot on the table with her?
No, it was on top of the piano, dude. It was on top of the piano. You could walk over and she would serenade
There you go.
By the
There
way,
you go.
that is in America, to quote Steve Dallas, that believed in booze, broads, and Buicks. By the way, that's from Bloom County. I'm not saying that, by the way. Dave,
Wow.
Dave, what is going on? What are you doing right now? You just listening to the show?
Who, me?
Yeah, you.
Yeah. Actually, I'm cleaning up the kitchen. Listening to the show.
Come over here, clean up this
I'm doing my custodial. I'm the custodian here, bro.
By the way,
Wow, that's very impressive.
Dre said if you want to come over and clean the studio, he'd be more than happy to actually employ your services. They actually cleaned it yesterday. All right, Dave Nemo, thank you for the phone call. We love you, brother. We might want to talk a little.
Absolutely.
Good talking to you, Dave. Thank you, my
Hi
friend.
to Greg and Jim and everybody. David, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Listen, but thanks for coming on. It's great hearing from you.
Oh, it's fantastic. By the way, that's the great joy of having Dave Nemo as your father-in-law. He can just drop in anytime he feels like it, especially when
Absolutely. That's just, when I saw that name, I was like, oh my goodness, that's from the Wayback Machine.
Oh, I know. He's like Mr. Peabody and Sherman. I feel like Sherman sometimes, just putting my glasses on. BrownDogCarriers.com is where you want to head. I do want you to, like I said, we our friends know who you guys are, but I did want to take a moment for you to kind of unpack who Brown Dog is, what you guys specialize in. We've kind of gotten bits and pieces as the conversation has rolled on.
Sure.
But make the pitch.
It started with Greg Morin. He was a driver for 15 years, drove for a company that I used to work for, in fact, as a recruiter. And one day he had this harebrained idea of buying a truck. And he bought a second one. And 8 years later now, we're up to, I think, about 40 all told. And we are only local all-day cabs based in Biddeford, Maine, or in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, which kind of limits where we can recruit from. Going back to our conversation about an hour commute, you can't do it. But we are a well-respected company. The pay is great. It's afternoon starts. You got to work a weekend day. But we reward people for that with good pay, pretty easy work, and for someone who's been out on the road, it's a nice opportunity to get home daily, and we have drivers that have been here, like Jim Costa, who Mr. Nemo referenced, has been with us since the beginning. And that's 7-8 years now. I mean, that speaks volumes to the way Greg runs his company.
Well,
so I'm very proud to be with them.
Yeah, I'll tell you this too, because I like I said, I'm just getting to know you, but I've kind of watched Jim and Greg talk about it openly, and I mean his ability, Greg's ability to kind of take other people's input, to have an open door in regards to kind of being there and listening. As a driver, it makes such a difference that he really understands
a huge difference
what these men and women are going through. The other thing is too, though, along with a lot of experienced folks and some folks who are, bring a lot of institutional wisdom, you guys are wide open in regards to wanting the younger generation to get involved. And I'm kind of wondering really quickly what your strategies are for onboarding people who, are really kind of jumping into the industry for the first time.
So we have to have a couple years experience. So I don't get the newbies right out of school. I did in a previous life, and gee whiz, one of the things that I encountered was a kid who was going through training and said, do you guys always work more than 8 hours a day? And I was kind of flabbergasted, and I thought it's so far from his frame of reference that he had no idea that a 12, 14-hour day is the norm in this business.
That's the hardest thing. That is the hardest thing with the younger kids, but it's like and that's one of the toughest things for a recruiter, I think, often is to kind of explain, okay, so what's the advantages? If I'm working this long, what are the kind of advantages? Now, you have an advantage in that you work for a guy who actually understands that if you make a living, you've also got to have a life, right?
Of course. And not only that, but we have a fully stocked kitchen. So when the drivers come in, there's food in the fridge, sodas, snacks, coffee, everything they need. At a previous carrier, they didn't want us to buy the slightly better coffee that the drivers preferred because it was $10 more a month.
Oh, my God.
I mean, come on. And so it just, and that's when I realized I was dealing with management that was from a mega carrier and looked at spreadsheets all day. It never looked from the inside the windshield out onto the world and what makes a driver feel appreciated. Because it goes back to the whole thing. If a driver doesn't feel appreciated, there's plenty of time for them to look out the windshield and get thinking about other carriers or asking people about other opportunities. And just stupid things like not being willing to buy a better cup of coffee is again, a morale buster, a complete morale buster.
Yeah, it sounds like basically the equivalent of the Oakland A's of trucking is what it sounds like to me. And by the way,
well,
go ahead.
We might have some people from the Bay Area, so I'm going to,
Oh, my God, that's a raw spot. Really quickly to make you laugh, our good friend, the Paranormal Pieman, wrote, "I like getting yelled at. I yell back." And the Doodah Man said, "I used to contract with TRL. Nobody in dispatch yells at me for some reason." Just really great to have you, by the way. One more time, tell people where they can go to get more information if they happen to be in your region and looking for opportunities.
So it's browndogcarriers.com. And we're in Biddeford, Maine, and in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And by all means, we have a little application link. My number's on the website. Feel free to call, because I love talking to drivers that are a little uncertain about what to do next. And that next step may not be with me, but maybe I can help them talk through what that next step might be for them.
Thank you, David, so much. You are welcome back anytime. Loved every minute of it. And if we can get Nemo to call. Yeah, go ahead.
I love to talk. So believe me. And I believe in this industry. I love this industry. And all you drivers out there that are listening, I wish you all the best and safe travels.
David, it's been an absolute pleasure. Good to have you on here, guys.